The millionaire reaches home early and almost faints at what he sees. The last sound of a child's laughter echoed in the stuffy afternoon air, a sound so shock and unexpected that Alex felt like some invisible hand was squeezing his heart until it stopped. His Italian leather briefcase, heavy with big money contracts and headache corporate worries, slipped from his fingers and hit the driveway gravel with a dull thud that he didn't even listen to. His eyes, trained to read financial statements and spot lies in the boardroom, couldn't process the impossible scene unfolding on the immaculate lawn of his own bungalow. There, under the golden 4 p.m. sun, his son Leo, the same boy whom 5 internationally renowned neurologists had diagnosed with severe autism and permanent emotional disconnection, was clinging to the back of a woman. It wasn't his fiancée, Clara. It wasn't some specialized caregiver with 3 PhDs. It was the domestic helper, a young girl he'd barely looked in the eye twice, wearing a cheap blue uniform and ridiculous bright yellow rubber gloves that shone under the sun. She was crawling on the emerald green grass, never mind the dirt stains on her knees, making horse noises, neigh-neigh sounds. While his little Leo, all 6 years old, who supposedly cannot stand physical contact, buried his face in the woman's neck and roared with laughter, arms wide open as if trying to hug the whole world. Alex felt his legs give way, the air stuck in his throat. How come? Just that morning, Clara, his future wife, had reminded him in that tone of faked patience that Leo needed a higher dose of sedatives because his aggression tantrums were seabay unbearable. She'd told him the boy was a lost cause, an empty shell that only brought sakit and expenses. But what Alex saw before his eyes wasn't an empty shell. It was a vibrant, happy, living child. He took a hesitant step towards the garden, feeling the ground shift under his feet. The scene was as hypnotic as it was painful. Mei Ling, the cleaning lady, paused to catch her breath, and instead of coldly pushing the boy away, she turned her head and gave Leo a quick tickle on the side with the tip of her nose. Leo burst into a fresh wave of laughter, a sound Alex hadn't heard since his first wife's accident 4 years ago. 4 years of silence, 4 years of blank stares and stiff bodies. And now, a helper with dishwashing gloves had achieved in 20 minutes what the best doctors in Europe couldn't manage in a lifetime. Cold fury and a burning hope clashed in the millionaire's chest. Someone had been lying to him, and the truth was right there, laughing on the grass. Subscribe to find out why this moment uncovered a web of lies that would change their lives forever. Alex resumed his march, this time with firmer steps, though his mind was a whirlwind. Every meter he advanced towards them chipped away at the image they'd sold him of his own son. Leo didn't have a lost-in-the-void look. His brown eyes, so much like his late mother's, were fixed on Mei Ling's face with absolute Kyong adoration. There was no trace of the muscle stiffness that justified the red wheelchair, parked a few meters away, empty and forgotten like a bad omen. The boy held on tight, his small fingers gripping the fabric of the blue uniform. Alex stepped onto the lawn, and the crunch of the grass under his designer shoes broke the magic bubble. Mei Ling froze mid-movement. Her instinct was immediate and visceral. She felt someone's presence before seeing them, and the bright smile on her face vanished, replaced by a deathly pallor. She turned her head sharply, and her eyes met the imposing figure of Alex, standing backlit, his face unreadable, fists clenched by his sides. Pure terror flooded the young woman's gaze. She knew the house rules were strict. Cleaning staff were forbidden from interacting with the young master, beyond what was strictly necessary for hygiene. Clara had been very clear. If you touch him, you stress him. If you stress him, you cannot fired without reference. Mei Ling let out a gasp, gently lowering Leo onto the grass, trying to create distance between her body and the child's, as if caught committing a terrible crime. But Leo didn't want to let go. The boy whimpered a clear, human sound of protest and clung again to the sleeve of her uniform, smearing it with his dirt-filled fingers. "Sir, Mr. Alex," Mei Ling stammered, quickly dropping to her knees, not daring to stand up fully, her yellow-gloved hands trembling visibly in front of her chest. "I so sorry, didn't see the time. Didn't know you'd be back early. Please don't angry." He just wanted to play a bit. Alex didn't reply immediately. His silence was heavy, loaded with an intensity that Mei Ling interpreted as the prelude to an instant sacking. She lowered her head, expecting shouts, expecting the humiliation she usually received from Madame Clara. But the shouts didn't come. Instead, Alex watched his son. Leo, noticing the tension in Mei Ling, had stopped laughing. His face transformed, shifting from joy to alert concern. The boy dragged himself across the floor, moving with strength and coordination, and positioned himself in front of Mei Ling, raising his small arms like a shield, looking at his own father with distrust. That gesture hit Alex harder than any insult. His son, the emotional invalid, was trying to shield the maid from his own father. "Don't move," Alex ordered, his voice sounding hoarse, almost unrecognizable to his own ears. It wasn't a shout, it was a plea disguised as a command. Mei Ling froze, eyes welling up with unshed tears. Leo remained there, brow furrowed, an expression of defiance on his young face that Alex had never seen. They always told him Leo didn't recognize people, that to him, humans were indistinguishable objects. But the boy knew perfectly well who the threat was and who his refuge was. Alex tasted something bitter in his mouth. Guilt burned him. He had spent so long traveling, so long working to pay for treatments, blindly trusting Clara and the specialists, that he had become a stranger to his own flesh and blood. Alex slowly squatted down, ignoring how the fabric of his $5K suit stretched and stained with the garden's dampness. He came to their eye level. Mei Ling breathed raggedly, the smell of detergent and band-aids emanating from her clothes. A simple, homey mix that contrasted sharply with the expensive, chemical perfumes that usually flooded the mansion. "Since when?" Alex asked, pinning his gaze on the young woman. His tone was urgent, demanding. "Sir?" Mei Ling blinked, confused, expecting a reprimand about dirt or messiness. "Since when does he do that?" Alex pointed to Leo, who was now gently stroking the girl's rubber-gloved hand with one finger, seeking comfort. "The doctors, Clara, everyone told me his muscles were atrophied. They told me he couldn't support his own weight, couldn't focus his gaze, that laughter was an involuntary reflex, impossible in his condition." "Since when does he laugh like that?" Mei Ling swallowed, realizing her boss's anger wasn't directed at her, or at least not for the reason she thought. She looked at Leo with infinite tenderness, forgetting for a second that she was speaking to one of the most powerful men in the country. "Since I started working here 6 months ago, sir," she whispered, and those 2 words fell like rocks onto Alex's conscience. At first he was shy, yes, but he's not atrophied. He's just sad and very scared. Scared. Alex repeated the word as if it were a foreign language. What would he be afraid of? He has everything he needs. 24-hour care, the best room, therapies. Mei Ling hesitated. She knew what she was about to say could cost her not only her job but also her reputation if Madame Clara found out. But she felt Leo's little hand squeeze her finger, and that contact gave her sudden courage. She looked up and held the millionaire's gaze. "He's not afraid of what, sir? He's afraid of who?" The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant chirping of a bird. Alex felt a chill run down his spine despite the afternoon heat. The puzzle pieces, those pieces that never fit the accidental bruises, the crying that magically stopped when Clara left the room, her insistence on keeping him sedated, they all began to merge into a grotesque picture he had refused to see. "Explain yourself," Alex said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And you better tell the truth, Mei Ling. Because if what you're implying is true, he changes when she arrives," Mei Ling blurted out quickly, words tripping over each other. "When Madame Clara is home, Leo shuts down, goes stiff, closes his eyes, and doesn't respond. The doctors see him like that because she is always present at consultations, right?" Alex remembered the medical visits. Clara was always the devoted fiancée, the perfect surrogate mother, stroking the boy's neck, whispering in his ear. She always touches his neck, Alex thought, and a sudden nausea washed over him as he recalled an old documentary about pressure points. It was possible, not monstrous. But the laughter he had just heard, didn't lie. "I want to see more," Alex ordered, standing up abruptly, startling Mei Ling. "You said he's not atrophied. Show me what he can do now." "Sir, I'm not a therapist. We were just playing." Mei Ling tried to excuse herself, afraid of having said too much. "Do it," he roared. Then, seeing Leo shrink back, he softened his tone, running a hand through his gray hair in desperation. "Please, I need to see. I need to know I'm not crazy for believing my son is in there." Mei Ling nodded slowly, wiped her hands on her apron, took off the yellow rubber gloves, and placed them on the grass, revealing hard-working, soft hands. She turned to the boy, and her posture changed. She was no longer the scared helper. She was a playmate. She began humming a soft melody, a popular lullaby Alex vaguely remembered from his own childhood. "Come on, Leo, the aeroplane is taking off," she said, with a sing-song voice, spreading her arms. To Alex's astonishment, Leo didn't just smile. The boy placed his hands on the floor, tensed the muscles in his supposedly useless legs, and with a visible but determined effort, lifted his bottom off the ground. He got into a crawling position by himself. No help, no mechanical supports, it was pure motor will. Leo crawled 2 steps towards Mei Ling and then, glancing sideways at his father, let out a guttural sound that slowly formed into syllables. Aeroplane. The word was clumsy, slurred, but unmistakable. Alex covered his mouth to stifle a sob. Mute. The diagnosis said mute, not non-verbal, and there was his son asking to play aeroplane. Alex's world, built on medical reports and blind trust in his fiancée, collapsed in that instant, exposing a brilliant and terrible reality. Leo was healthy. Someone was keeping him sick on purpose. My God, Alex whispered, falling to his knees beside his son. He extended a trembling hand towards the boy's cheek. Leo didn't pull away this time, though he kept his eyes fixed on Mei Ling, seeking approval. She nodded slightly with a sad smile. Alex touched his son's warm skin and felt an electric connection. But before he could process the miracle, the sound of a powerful engine roared at the main entrance. A red sports car screeched to a halt on the gravel. Leo's body reacted instantly. The smile vanished. His shoulders tensed, and his eyes glazed over, returning to that empty, lost look Alex knew so well. Mei Ling turned pale as paper. It's her, the helper whispered, gathering the gloves from the floor with clumsy hands. Sir, please, if she sees me playing with him. Leo's transformation was the ultimate proof. It wasn't an illness. It was terror. Alex felt his blood boil, a volcanic fury threatening to erupt, but his years in business had taught him a vital lesson. Never attack when the enemy doesn't know you're there. He looked towards the house where Clara's heels were already echoing in the foyer, and then looked at Mei Ling. Get up, Alex said. His voice was cold and calculating, the tone he used to destroy competitors. Put your gloves back on. Act like nothing happened, sir. Mei Ling looked at him without understanding. Listen to me carefully, Mei Ling. From this moment on, you and I are allies. No one, absolutely no one, can know what I just saw. Today I'm not confronting her. Today, I start destroying her. Alex stood up, brushed the dust from his suit, and with one last look at his son, who had already returned to his feigned catatonic state, he ran towards the side service door. I'll enter via the study. She'll think I was working. When she comes out here, I want you to observe everything, because tonight, everything changes. From the study window, hidden behind heavy velvet curtains that smelled of dust and age, Alex watched the scene with bated breath, like a sniper waiting for the moment to shoot. His heart pounded with a violence that ached in his ribs, a dull drumming accompanying the arrival of the woman he planned to marry in 2 months. The contrast was brutal, almost cinematic. The garden, which minutes ago had been a stage for laughter and miracles under the golden sun, metaphorically darkened the instant Clara appeared in the French doorframe. She didn't walk, she paraded. She wore red stiletto heels that savagely dug into the perfect lawn, ruining the grass with every step, a perfect metaphor for what she had done to their lives. Impeccably dressed, with designer sunglasses covering half her face and a handbag that cost more than Mei Ling's annual salary. But what froze Alex's blood wasn't her clothes, but her body language. From the safety of his hiding spot, he saw Clara's posture radiating a tense, electric aggression. No one else was around, or so she thought, so the mask of the devoted, suffering mother had fallen to the ground along with her keys. What the hell are you doing? Clara's scream pierced the study's double glazing, muffled but unmistakably laced with poison. Alex watched Mei Ling physically flinch, a conditioned reflex of someone who has received too many verbal blows. The helper jumped to her feet, lowering her head with her hands clasped over her dirty apron. But the worst was Leo, his son, the boy who 5 minutes ago was saying aeroplane and crawling strongly. He collapsed on himself like a house of cards. His shoulders hunched, his arms stuck to his body in spasmodic rigidity, and his face, previously illuminated by joy, emptied of all expression. The fish mouth, as the doctors called it, that glassy stare into nothingness. Alex clenched his fist against the windowsill until his knuckles turned white. It wasn't autism. It was a defense mechanism. The boy was playing dead to survive the predator. "Look at him!" Clara shrieked, pointing at Leo with an accusatory finger that had a perfectly manicured nail. "He's disgusting, full of dirt and grass. I pay you to roll him around like an animal, or to keep him clean." Mei Ling tried to speak, her lips moving in a silent apology, but Clara didn't let her. The woman strode towards the boy with quick steps. Alex felt the visceral urge to break the glass and jump into the garden, but he forced himself to stay still. "Watch her," he ordered himself. "You need to see what she's capable of when she thinks you're not looking." Clara reached Leo and, instead of crouching to clean him or gently scold him, she grabbed him by the arm. It wasn't a maternal touch. It was a sharp, dry, violent tug. She lifted the boy's arm, as if he were a broken rag doll. Leo didn't complain, didn't cry. He simply allowed himself to be manipulated, dangling from her hand, inert. That passivity terrified Alex more than any cry. It meant this was routine. It meant Leo had learned that resisting was worse. "You are useless," Clara hissed, bringing her face close to the boy's, though Alex had to read her lips to understand the full sentence. "I turned my back for 5 minutes and you already look like a porpoise," a common term for an unattractive or messy person. "If your father sees you like this, he'll think I don't take care of you. And if he thinks that, the money for your sweets stops. Understand?" She pulled a tissue from her bag and began rubbing Leo's face vigorously, almost scraping his skin to remove a patch of dirt. The boy's head jerked with every brusque movement of her hand. Mei Ling took a step forward, an act of suicidal bravery. "Madam, please, you'll hurt his skin," the helper said, her trembling voice barely reaching the study. Clara spun around with the speed of a viper. "Shut up, you stupid, ah!" she screamed, throwing the dirty tissue in her face. "You are the one to blame. Go to the kitchen and prepare his drops. The double dose, he's too agitated because of you. He needs to sleep before Alex gets back. I don't want him to see you so defective." Double dose. The words echoed in Alex's mind like a gunshot. He remembered the monthly pharmacy bills, broad-spectrum pediatric sedatives. The doctor said they were to control his anger outbursts. Now, he understood the outbursts were fabricated. The drops weren't to calm him, they were to switch him off. They were to turn a healthy child into a silent piece of furniture that wouldn't bother the future missus of the house's plans. Alex felt a hot, solitary tear roll down his cheek. He had been paying month after month to drug his own son. Alex stepped away from the window, taking a deep breath to control the tremor in his hands. He had to get out there, he had to act. But he couldn't be the angry father. He had to be the cold strategist. If he confronted her now with shouts, she would cry. She would say she was stressed, blame Mei Ling, manipulate the situation, as she always did. He didn't need her to dig her own grave. He loosened his tie, undid the top button of his shirt to look tired, and opened the study door leading to the interior hall, not the garden. He walked heavily towards the main entrance of the house, making his shoes sound on the marble, announcing his presence as if he had just walked in the front door. "Clara, I'm home!" he shouted in a voice feigning exhaustion and normalcy. The effect in the garden was instantaneous. Through the open door of the living room, he saw Clara drop Leo's arm as if it were burning her. In less than 2 seconds, her posture changed radically. She straightened her dress, ran a hand through her hair to fix it, and composed a bright, rehearsed, perfect smile. She quickly crouched beside Leo and, with a softness that made one nauseous to watch, began stroking the cheek she had seconds ago been rubbing violently. "Alex, my love," she exclaimed, turning towards the house with shining eyes. "What a surprise. You're back super early." Alex stepped out onto the garden, forcing his legs to walk slowly, forcing his lips to sketch a tired smile. His eyes scanned the scene. Mei Ling was pale, picking up the tissue from the floor with her eyes fixed on the grass. Leo was still in statue mode, staring at a fixed point on the horizon. The meeting finished early. Alex lied, approaching her and giving her a peck on the cheek. He smelled Clara's expensive perfume and had to suppress the urge to vomit. "I want to see them. How are they? How was the day?" It was a trap question, a simple test. Clara sighed dramatically, placing a hand on her chest, playing the martyr's role. "Oh, darling, it's been a hard day," she said in an afflicted voice, looking at Leo with false sadness. "The poor thing has been terrible today. Shouting all morning, he banged his head against the wall. I had to fight to stop him from hurting himself. The doctors are right. His condition is getting worse. I could barely get him out to the garden a minute ago for some air, but look, he's not even reacting. He's completely gone." Alex felt his blood boil. Shouting all morning? A lie. Mei Ling told him they were playing. Banged his head? A lie. There were no marks. Getting worse? The biggest lie of all. "Really?" Alex asked, crouching in front of Leo. The boy didn't look at him. He felt Clara's presence like a toxic shadow over them. "Poor thing, he looks exhausted." "He is," Clara insisted, placing a possessive hand on the boy's shoulder, squeezing slightly. Alex noticed Leo make an imperceptible grimace of pain. "I told Mei Ling to prepare his medicine. He needs to rest, love." "Maybe we should admit him to that Zurich center," Dr. Velas suggested. "I know it's expensive and far, but I don't have the strength anymore. I'm worried about his safety." There it was, the final plan. Sending him away, getting rid of the problem forever, and keeping only the millionaire and his fortune. Alex looked at Mei Ling. The helper looked up for a second, her eyes full of panic, silently begging him not to believe the lies. Alex held her gaze, a silent message of, "I see you. I believe you." "No," Alex said, standing up and dusting his knees. His voice was firm, sharp. "We are not sending him anywhere yet. In fact, I want to spend the afternoon with him." Clara's face tightened imperceptibly. "But darling, he's having a crisis. It can be dangerous. You know how aggressive he gets." She tried to dissuade him, stepping between father and son. "I don't care." Alex walked around her and looked at Mei Ling. "Mei Ling, don't bring the drops. Bring orange juice and stay here. I want you here too. It seems Leo is comfortable with you." Clara let out a nervous, disbelieving chuckle. "Mei Ling, darling, please. She's just the cleaning girl. Leo doesn't even know she exists. She's an object to him. Besides, she has a lot to do inside. The house is a mess." "The house can wait," Alex cut in, and this time he let a bit of his CEO authority slip into his tone. He looked directly into Clara's eyes, challenging her for the first time in years. "I noticed something strange, Clara." The silence became dense. Clara blinked, her smile wavering. "Strange? What do you mean?" "That when I arrived," Alex paused deliberately, enjoying the flicker of fear in her eyes. "I thought I heard laughter. A child's laughter." Clara froze. Her calculating mind raced. "Ah, that," she said quickly, regaining her composure. "It must have been the neighbor's kids. The wind carries the sound. Leo hasn't laughed in years, Alex. Don't give yourself cruel illusions. His brain doesn't work like that." "Maybe," Alex said, turning towards his son. He bent down and, breaking all the rules Clara had imposed, lifted Leo into his arms. The boy tensed like a wooden board, expecting a scolding or a hit, but Alex hugged him tightly, pressing him against his chest, whispering near his ear so only he could hear, ignoring the woman watching them suspiciously. "Aeroplane," Alex whispered. "Papa is here. The aeroplane is taking off, champ." He felt Leo's small body shudder. And then, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, a small hand rested on the shoulder of Alex's expensive suit. It wasn't a full hug, but it was a response, proof of life. "Let's go inside," Alex said loudly, walking towards the house with his son in his arms, leaving Clara standing in the garden with her mouth open. "Mei Ling, come with us now." Clara was left behind, watching them walk away. For the first time, control was slipping through her fingers. And Alex, walking towards the mansion that had become a prison, swore he wouldn't sleep tonight until he found the pill bottle and the security cameras he planned to install. The war had begun. The atmosphere inside the mansion was unbreathable, a mixture of sterile luxury and silent tension. Alex entered the main foyer with Leo in his arms, feeling his son's body like a block of rigid ice against his chest. Behind him, the sound of Clara's heels echoed like gunshots on the Italian marble, a constant reminder of the threat trailing them. Mei Ling entered last, closing the door with a softness that denoted her fear of being noticed, sticking close to the wall as if trying to merge with the wallpaper. "Take him to his room immediately, Alex," Clara ordered, her voice regaining that commanding tone disguised as medical concern. "He's overstimulated. Look how he's shaking." That walk in the garden was a terrible mistake. "Mei Ling, move. Go to the kitchen and bring the Quiet Nights bottle and the new dropper. The boy broke the other one yesterday in one of his hysterical fits." Hysterical fits. Alex knew now they were lies, but he needed to see how far the charade went. He walked up the stairs feeling bile in his throat. He entered Leo's room, a space that looked more like a clinic than a child's bedroom. White walls, rounded furniture, toys locked in glass display cases, and a persistent smell of antiseptic. He placed Leo gently on the bed. The boy didn't move. He stared at the ceiling with wide eyes, breathing shallowly. The terror in his gaze was absolute. Clara swept in like a whirlwind, snatching the space. "Go out, my love," she said, lightly pushing Alex towards the door. "You don't like seeing him when I give him the drops. You know it gets difficult and breaks your heart. I'll handle it. It's my burden. I carry it for you." "No," Alex said, planting himself in the threshold. His shadow covered the bed. "Today I'm staying. I want to learn. If we're getting married, I need to know how to care for my son." A flash of annoyance crossed Clara's eyes, but she quickly hid it with a sad smile. Mei Ling appeared at the door with a silver tray. Her hands were shaking so much that the tinted glass bottle rattled against the metal. "Give it to me." Clara snatched the bottle from Mei Ling with abruptness. What happened next was etched into Alex's retina like a horror film. Clara wasn't sweet. There were no songs or patience. She grabbed Leo's jaw with one hand, squeezing the boy's cheeks hard to force his mouth open. Leo tried to turn his head, emitting a choked groan, his small eyes desperately searching for Mei Ling at the door. "Stay still." "Ah," Clara whispered, momentarily forgetting Alex was there, or perhaps confident he would interpret her violence as necessary firmness. Clara inserted the dropper by force. 1, 2, 3, 4 drops. The thick, yellowish liquid disappeared down the boy's throat. Leo coughed, gagging, shaking his small body, but he swallowed. The reaction was almost immediate, too fast for anything natural. In seconds, the tension in Leo's muscles vanished, replaced by an unnatural flaccidity. His eyelids fell heavily. The light in his eyes went out. He didn't fall asleep, he disconnected. It was as if someone had cut the wires of a doll. "See," Clara said, wiping a drop of the liquid that had fallen on her finger and capping the bottle. "It's for his own good. Without this, he'd hurt himself. Now he'll sleep 12 hours straight. Peace for him. Peace for us." Alex looked at his son, who now lay with his mouth agape, drooling slightly, turned into the vegetable the doctors described. He felt a murderous urge to grab Clara by the neck and throw her out the window, but he restrained himself, gripping the door frame until the wood creaked. He couldn't save him today. He had to save him forever. And for that, he needed irrefutable proof. He needed the world to see the monster. "You're right, darling," Alex lied, his voice dead. "You have a gift with him. I don't know what I'd do without you." Clara smiled victoriously, tucking the bottle into her pocket instead of leaving it on the bedside table. "Let's go downstairs. Mei Ling will stay and watch him. You and I need a glass of wine. I'm exhausted." As they left, Alex turned back for a second. Mei Ling was at the foot of the bed, weeping silently. Alex gave her an imperceptible nod. "Hold on." The early morning arrived, shrouded in sepulchral silence. The mansion was asleep, or so it seemed. Clara was snoring softly in the master bedroom, under the effects of 2 glasses of Chardonnay and the satisfaction of having controlled the crisis. But Alex was wide awake, dressed in black clothes, moving like a ghost through his own house. He had waited until 3 a.m. to execute the first phase of his plan. He entered his study and opened the safe, hidden behind a painting. He didn't take out money, but a black case he used for industrial espionage at his company's button-sized high-definition micro-cameras with real-time cloud streaming. He headed first to Leo's room. The door creaked slightly, but the boy, under the effect of the sedatives, didn't move. Alex felt a pang of pain seeing his son in this chemical coma, but he turned the pain into precision. He worked fast. He installed a camera in the glass eye of a teddy bear on a high shelf. Another was hidden in the smoke detector on the ceiling. A third, with a high-gain microphone, was discreetly placed behind the curtain, pointing directly at the bed. Then he went downstairs to the living room and the garden. He placed devices on the lamps, in the picture frames, and a strategic one in the kitchen, where he knew Mei Ling and Clara interacted the most. Every angle was covered. Every lie would be recorded in 4K. Returning upstairs, he passed the hallway bathroom. He knew Clara sometimes left things there. He opened the medicine cabinet with surgical care. At the back, behind her $500 face creams, he found an empty bottle of Leo's medicine that she hadn't thrown away. Alex took it with a tissue, avoiding fingerprints, and put it in a Ziploc bag. Tomorrow, he would take it to a private lab. He needed to know exactly what poison they were giving his blood. When the sun began to dawn, tinting the sky a pale gray, Alex was already impeccably dressed in his business suit, with a suitcase packed by the door. His face was a mask of executive coldness. He went down to the kitchen, where Mei Ling was already preparing coffee, her eyes puffy from lack of sleep. "Good morning," Alex said quietly. Mei Ling jumped in fright, nearly dropping the coffee maker. "Good morning, sir." Alex approached her. No one else was around. Clara was still sleeping. "Listen carefully, Mei Ling. In 10 minutes, I'll go down with Clara and tell her I'm going on a trip. Urgent business in London. 3 days. Mei Ling's eyes filled with panic. "She'll leave me alone with her, sir, please. She was very angry yesterday. If you leave, I'm not safe." He interrupted her, gently taking her hands. "It's a setup. I'll drive out, circle around, and stay at the abandoned guest house at the end of the property. I've installed cameras all over the house." Mei Ling stopped trembling and looked at him in astonishment. "Cameras? Yes. I need her to get complacent. I need her to show her true self in front of the camera so the police can take her away and she can never get near Leo again. But I need your help. You have to hold on. It's going to be hell. She'll think I'm gone and she'll let loose. Can you bear it?" For Leo, the helper, the simple girl with yellow gloves, straightened her back. A fierce determination shone in her eyes that no helper should ever have to show. "For Leo, sir. I'll endure anything." "Good." Alex heard footsteps upstairs. "Here she comes." "Remember, I have to be convincing. If I shout at you or ignore you before I leave, it's part of the theater. Don't forget." Clara appeared in the kitchen, wrapped in a silk robe, yawning with feigned elegance. "Alex, what is that suitcase at the entrance?" she asked, her gaze traveling from the suitcase to him with suspicion. "A problem came up with the Japanese investors." Alex lied with a perfect tone of frustration. "I have to fly to London for an emergency video conference and sign the new agreements. I'm leaving right now. The jet is waiting for me." Alex saw the exact moment Clara's eyes lit up. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. It was the anticipation of freedom. "London," she said, walking closer to hug him, hiding her smile on his shoulder. "Oh, darling, how terrible. Just when I thought we'd have a quiet few days. But I understand, duty calls. I'll be back in 3 days, maybe 4, he added, giving her leeway to make mistakes. "Take care of Leo. I trust you." "I will take care of him like he was my own," she replied. And the lie hung in the air, dense and toxic. Alex picked up his suitcase and walked towards the exit without looking back, knowing he was leaving his son in the lion's den, but also knowing that he would be the hunter waiting in the shadows. As soon as his car engine faded down the driveway, Clara turned to Mei Ling, and her perfect wife's smile melted like wax in a fire, revealing the cruel sneer underneath. "Good. Stupid, Clara said, pulling out her phone. "The boss is gone. Today is my day. Clean the main hall and bring up the expensive wine from the cellar. I'm inviting my kakis, and as for the boy, lock him in the basement. I don't want his screaming to spoil my party." The air in the guest house was stale, soaked in an odor of old wood and confinement that violently contrasted with the climate-controlled freshness of the main mansion, just 200 meters away. Alex didn't turn on any lights. He couldn't risk a flash giving him away. He sat on an old wicker chair that creaked under his weight, illuminated only by the glow on his side of the laptop screen. His eyes, red and dry from lack of blinking, were fixed on the mosaic of images streaming from the hidden cameras. What he saw was torture, custom designed to shatter his soul, but he couldn't look away. He was the silent witness to his own tragedy. On the top left monitor, the kitchen camera showed Mei Ling. The young woman was crying, but silently, with that terrifying resignation of someone who has learned that noise only brings more punishment. She was carrying Leo in her arms. The boy, completely inert from the overdose of sedatives Clara had administered, had his head lolled back, swaying dangerously with every step the helper took. He looked like a small corpse. Alex felt an electric impulse to run out, to smash the door and kill everyone with his bare hands, a primal, savage instinct burning in his gut. But he forced himself to stay seated. His hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly that the old wood began to splinter under his nails. "Not yet," he repeated mentally, biting his lip until he tasted metal. "I need her to do it. I need her to commit the final crime on camera." "To the basement," I said. Clara's voice, captured by the environmental microphone hidden in the lamp, sounded metallic and distorted, but laced with sharp cruelty. On the screen, Clara appeared behind Mei Ling, poking her in the back with the tip of her finger, like someone driving cattle. She held a glass of wine in her hand and moved with an obscene lightness, humming a trendy song. "Madam, please, the basement is very damp," Mei Ling pleaded, stopping in front of the solid wooden door leading to darkness. "The boy has weak bronchi. I don't give a damn about his bronchi," Clara exploded, her face contorting on the screen. "Do you think I'm going to let my guests see that phenomenon drooling on the sofa? It's a classy party, Mei Ling, not a charity hospital. Put him in there, lock the door, and go prepare the canapés. And if you dare open that door before I tell you to, I swear I'll have you charged with theft. I have a lost gold watch, you know? It would be a pity if it showed up in your bag." The threat was clear. Jail. Mei Ling lowered her head in defeat. Alex watched the helper open the basement door. The camera had no angle towards the stairs below, but the audio picked up the sound of footsteps descending into the darkness. A minute later, Mei Ling came back up alone, empty-handed, her face washed in tears. Clara locked the basement door, tucking the key into the cleavage of her dress, with a smile of triumphant satisfaction. "Done. Problem solved. Now, clean up. I want this kitchen to shine." Alex closed his eyes for a second, feeling a deep nausea. His son, his little Leo, locked up like an animal in a damp, dusty basement, drugged and helpless. Powerlessness was a poison running through his veins, but it was interrupted by the sound of a notification on his phone, an urgent email. The sender was, "Dr. Salazar, the head of the private lab to which he had sent the samples that morning via a trusted courier. The email subject line read, "Toxicology results, critical level urgent." Alex opened the file with trembling fingers. He didn't need to be a doctor to understand the red bars crossing the chart. Patient, Leo, 6 years old. Residue sample in bottle and saliva from tissue. Results positive for clinophenol and diazepam in concentrations 3 times higher than the safe limit for an adult. Traces of central nervous system suppressants, not approved for pediatric use. Note: continuous use of this combination not only causes temporary motor paralysis and a catatonic state, but is generating cumulative neurological damage. At these doses, the risk of respiratory arrest during sleep is 80%. Alex dropped the phone onto the table. It wasn't just abuse. It wasn't just neglect. It was slow-motion murder. Clara wasn't controlling Leo. She was slowly killing him, erasing his brain, switching off his lungs, ensuring that if he didn't die, he would be so damaged he could never claim his inheritance or tell the truth. The woman he was going to marry, the woman who pretended to love him, was executing his son day after day. The coldness of the strategist disappeared. Now, only the fury of the father remained. Alex looked at the monitor where Clara was pouring herself another glass of wine, laughing alone in the kitchen. He had the toxicology reports. Now he had the video of the confinement. He had enough to send her to jail for years, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to destroy her. He wanted her high society friends, those she pretended to be perfect for, to see the monster she was. He wanted a public humiliation so devastating that she couldn't hide under any rock. He checked the clock. 7 p.m. The guests' cars would start arriving any moment. The party was about to begin, and Alex, from his dark cave, prepared to be the conductor in the hell that was coming. Night fell over the property like a heavy cloak, hiding the moral ugliness under perfectly designed garden lights. From his laptop screen, Alex watched as the facade of his house transformed. Clara had turned on the decorative lights, creating a fairy tale atmosphere that starkly contrasted with the reality of the basement. The first luxury cars began to slide down the driveway. Mercedes, BMWs, convertibles driven by women dressed as if they were attending a charity gala, oblivious that they were entering a crime scene. The sound of lounge music began to filter through the living room microphones. Alex turned up the volume on his headphones so he wouldn't miss a word. He needed to hear everything. He needed ammunition. Clara greeted her friends at the main door with effusive hugs and air kisses that didn't touch the skin. "Welcome. Come in, come in," Clara exclaimed radiantly in an emerald silk dress. "The house is all ours. The boss went to London to make more money for us, and the package is resting." "The package?" asked a blonde woman with too many jewels, letting out a cruel little laugh as she accepted a glass of champagne from a tray held by Mei Ling. "You know, the boy," Clara replied, lowering her voice in a conspiratorial tone as they walked towards the living room. "He was unbearable today, shouting, drooling a horror. I had to give him his special medicine and lock him where he won't bother us. Honestly, girls, it's a sacrifice none of you would understand. Living with a child like that is like living with a broken pet. But hey, Alex feels guilty, and that translates into compensations." Clara gestured broadly towards the living room renovations, the new furniture, and her own diamond necklace. The friends laughed a sound of silk-clad fullness. "You're a saint, Clara," said another tall brunette woman. "I would have already sent him to a state boarding school and thrown away the key." "Patience, dear. Patience and strategy," Clara said, winking towards the camera hidden in the painting, unaware that her fiancé was recording every pixel of her confession. "Once we're married and Alex gives me full control of the medical trust, let's just say little Leo will need a more favorable climate in Switzerland. Very far from here. And very cheap, even if the bills say otherwise." Alex felt his temples throbbing. There was the financial confession, fraud, premeditation. He had it all. He could call the police right now. He could enter with a shotgun, but his gaze drifted to the bottom right monitor, the basement. There was no light down there, but the camera had infrared night vision. The image was grainy in shades of ghostly gray and green. Leo was moving. The sedative's effect was wearing off faster than usual, perhaps due to adrenaline from fear or because his body was developing tolerance to the poison. The boy was sitting on the old mattress they used for winter storage. He hugged his knees, rocking frantically. Alex moved his face closer to the screen. He could see pure terror in his son's eyes, which shone in the dark like a scared cat's. Leo looked towards the locked door at the top of the stairs, and then the boy did something that broke Alex's heart into 1,000 pieces. He began hitting the floor with his fists, but silently. He opened his mouth to shout, "Papa," but no sound came out. Or maybe he was too afraid the witch would hear. Upstairs, the party was in full swing. The music had been turned up. Mei Ling moved between the guests with canapés, invisible to them, treated like another piece of furniture. But Alex noticed something in the helper's posture. Mei Ling wasn't looking at the guests. She was looking at the clock, looking at the basement door. She was tense, like a spring about to release. Taking advantage of Clara being busy telling an anecdote about her last trip to Paris, Mei Ling left the tray on a side table and slipped towards the kitchen. Alex quickly switched cameras to follow her. He saw her rummaging through the drawers in desperation. She wasn't looking for food. She was looking for something metallic, a screwdriver, a knife, anything to force the lock. "Don't do it, Mei Ling. She'll kill you," Alex whispered to the screen, his heart in his throat. He knew if Clara found her trying to open the door, the violence would be immediate. But Mei Ling didn't stop. She found an old butter knife and ran towards the basement door. She tried to wedge the tip into the lock, her hands shaking violently. The metallic noise, though faint, echoed in the silence of the kitchen. Crack. The sound didn't come from the door. It came from the kitchen entrance. "What do you think you're doing, you dirty traitor?" Alex watched as Clara appeared in the doorway, her face transformed by demonic rage. She had heard. She had followed the helper. Mei Ling dropped the knife, which clattered to the floor with a sound like a gunshot. "Madam, I heard a noise. I thought the boy had fallen," Mei Ling stammered, backing up until she collided with the basement door, protecting it with her body. "You thought. You are not here to think. You are here to serve," Clara hissed, advancing towards her with the wineglass still in hand. Her elegance had vanished. Now she was a predator, cornering her prey. "I told you not to open that door. I told you, if you did, you would regret it. You think you can defy me in my own house?" "He's awake, madam," Mei Ling said, and for the first time, she raised her voice. She didn't shout, but she spoke with a firmness that made Clara stop for a second. "He's awake, and he's scared. He's a child. You can't leave him there in the dark. It's inhuman." "Inhuman?" Clara let out a shrill, blood-curdling laugh. "Inhuman is having to care for a kiasu, a term for someone overly demanding, needy, that's useless for anything. He is a genetic mistake, and you are a workplace mistake. And I will correct both of you right now." Clara raised her hand. Not to slap her. Alex saw the glint of glass. She was going to hit her with the wineglass. She was going to slash her face. Alex didn't wait any longer. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He burst out of the guest house like a missile, without closing the door, without turning off the laptop. He ran across the dark garden, jumping hedges, ignoring the pain in his lungs, driven by a single need, to arrive before blood stained his kitchen floor. As he ran, he pulled out his phone and dialed a pre-recorded number with a single key press. "Security. Lock down all exits. No one leaves the property. I repeat, no one leaves. Activate red protocol." He reached the back terrace in seconds. Through the glass panes, he saw the guests chatting, oblivious to the violence happening meters away from them. Alex didn't use the door. He grabbed a wrought iron chair from the patio and threw it with all his brute force against the tempered glass window of the living room. The crash of breaking glass was louder than the music, louder than the laughter. It was the sound of final judgment arriving home. The guests screamed, covering their heads as a rain of shards fell onto the Persian rug. Alex entered through the broken gap, bleeding from a cut on his hand, with the look of a madman and the posture of an executioner. Clara's friends stood frozen with their glasses halfway to their mouths. "Alex!" one of them shrieked. "My God, what's happening?" Alex didn't look at them. He crossed the living room like a storm, knocking over a table in his path, and headed straight for the kitchen. He arrived just as Clara had Mei Ling by the hair with the glass raised to strike. "Let her go!" Alex roared. A scream so visceral it made the walls vibrate. Clara turned, and the glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Her face went from red rage to absolute white terror in a fraction of a second. She saw Alex, covered in dust, his hand bleeding, breathing raggedly, and in his eyes, she didn't see her fiancé. She saw her end. The silence that followed Alex's roar was more deafening than the shattering of the glass moments before. In the kitchen, time seemed to freeze in a bubble of unbearable tension. Clara, with her hand still raised where seconds ago she held the glass, stared at Alex as if seeing a ghost risen from the grave. Her face, a mask of perfect makeup, began to crumble, revealing the pure panic pulsing beneath. Mei Ling, hunched against the basement door, sobbed silently, eyes wide open, unable to process that the boss was there, bleeding and furious, instead of flying to London. "Alex, my love." Clara began, her voice trembling in a pathetic attempt to regain her usual honeyed tone. She slowly lowered her hand, forcing a smile that looked like a grimace of pain. My God, you scared me. Why did you come in like that? Are you hurt? Look at your hand. She took a step towards him, extending her arms as if to hug him, desperately trying to re-establish normalcy, to turn the scene of domestic violence into an unfortunate misunderstanding. Don't come any closer, Alex said. His voice wasn't a shout. This time it was a low, guttural growl, loaded with a threat so real that Clara stopped dead, stumbling over her own heels. If you take one more step, Clara, I swear I will forget I am a gentleman. Clara pallid. She looked towards the living room where her friends were crowded in the kitchen threshold, whispering with their forgotten champagne flutes in hand. The audience was watching. She had to act fast. Alex, please, you're overwrought, she said, raising her volume so the guests could hear, adopting her victim role. I understand you're stressed from work, but look what you've done. You've scared Mei Ling. The poor girl was having a nervous breakdown. She tried to steal silver cutlery, and I had to stop her. She was only trying to protect our house. It was a lie so fast, so fluid, that for a second Alex felt a repugnant admiration for her capacity for manipulation. Mei Ling gasped, shaking her head frantically. Lies, the helper shouted, finding her voice through her tears. Sir, the key is in her dress. Leo is downstairs. The mention of the boy's name broke the last thread of Alex's patience. He ignored Clara, ignored the gaping guests, and advanced towards his fiancée. There was no delicacy. Alex grabbed her wrist with his healthy hand, squeezing hard. The key, he demanded, looking her straight in the eyes with an intensity that burned her. Let go. You're hurting me, Clara whined, writhing. I don't know what you're talking about. The boy is sleeping in his room. Alex didn't wait. He saw the metallic glint peeking out from the cleavage of her designer dress. With a quick movement, he reached in and snatched the small bronze key hanging from a thin chain, breaking the clasp. Clara screamed more from the humiliation than the pain and clutched her chest, backing up towards the countertop. She's an animal, Clara shrieked to her friends. Call the police. He's gone mad. Alex didn't even look at her. He turned to Mei Ling, briefly placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture meaning you are safe, and then inserted the key into the basement door lock. The mechanism turned with a metallic click. Alex pulled the door open with a yank, and the smell of dampness and darkness hit his face. Leo screamed into the black abyss. There was no response, only the distant hum of the boiler. Without hesitation, Alex plunged down the stairs, stumbling in the darkness, guided by instinct. His hands touched the cold stone walls. Reaching the bottom, he fumbled for a switch, but the bulb was fused or broken. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of white light cut through the darkness of the messy space, full of old boxes and furniture covered with sheets. Leo, son, it's Papa. His voice cracked. Then he saw it. In a corner, behind a pile of rolled-up carpets, there was a small bundle trembling. Leo was curled up in a ball, his face buried between his knees, hands clamped over his ears. The boy was rocking back and forth, emitting a low, constant hum to block out the outside world. Alex knelt in front of him, feeling his soul tear apart. The floor was freezing. Leo was only in his thin pajamas. Chump, Alex whispered, stretching out his hand but stopping before touching him, so as not to frighten him. It's over. It's finished. Papa came for you. The aeroplane has landed. Leo stopped rocking. Slowly, very slowly, he lifted his head. The flashlight beam illuminated his dirt-smeared face, with traces of dried tears on his cheeks. His eyes, dilated from fear and sedative residue, focused on the light and then miraculously found Alex's face. "Papa!" the boy croaked with a dry throat. Alex dropped the phone and hugged him. It was a desperate, total hug. Leo didn't stay stiff. This time he clung to his father's neck with surprising strength, burying his face in his shirt, stained with blood and sweat, sobbing with a relief that no 6-year-old should ever have to feel. "Let's go up," Alex said, lifting him in his arms. Leo weighed very little, too little. "Let's get out of here." He climbed the stairs with a firm step, carrying his son as if he were the most precious treasure in the universe. As he crossed the threshold of the basement door back into the bright light of the kitchen, the scene had changed. Clara was no longer alone by the counter. She was surrounded by her friends, who were consoling her while she shed crocodile tears, fixing her dress. "And that's why I locked him up, because he tried to bite me," Clara was saying between feigned sobs. "He's dangerous, girls. Alex doesn't understand. His guilt as a father blinds him." Clara's voice died in her throat when she saw Alex emerge from the basement with the boy in his arms. Silence fell again, heavy and accusatory. Leo, dazzled by the light, hid his face in his father's neck. His pajamas were stained with mold, cobwebs in his hair. He looked like a street kid, not the heir to a fortune. Clara's friends recoiled in horror. The image was too potent to ignore. There was no dangerous child. There was a terrified creature and a father willing to kill for him. "Let's go to the living room," Alex said with a cold calm that was scarier than his previous shouts. It wasn't an invitation. It was an order. Everyone, now. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Clara spat, trying to regain control. "Are you drunk or drugged? Look at what you've done to the boy. You're dirtying him with your blood. Give him to me." In the absence of Carla, I am the legal mother. Clara tried to grab Leo's leg. Mei Ling called Alex, ignoring Clara and walking towards the living room, forcing the guests to step aside. "Come here." The helper, wiping her tears with her apron, straightened up and walked behind him, passing by Clara with her head held high for the first time in her life. Clara stood open-mouthed, watching her authority evaporate. But the villain wasn't ready to surrender. Public humiliation was her worst nightmare, and she wasn't going to allow it to happen. With a look of pure hatred, she followed the group into the main hall, where the enormous 85-inch television screen dominated the dark, silent wall, waiting to be turned on. The main hall, decorated with exquisite taste and fresh flowers that cost a fortune, had become an impromptu courtroom. Alex stopped in the center of the room, under the crystal chandelier. He gently lowered Leo onto the beige velvet sofa, a piece of furniture Clara had always forbidden the child from touching for fear of stains. Leo huddled into the cushion, looking around with wide eyes, searching for Mei Ling. The helper immediately positioned herself beside him, kneeling on the Persian rug and taking his hand. The boy sighed, instantly calming as he felt the familiar touch of the rubber gloves she had forgotten to remove, or perhaps had decided to keep on as her armor. Clara's guests, 5 women from the local high society, stood in an awkward semicircle, unsure whether to leave or stay to watch the spectacle. Morbid curiosity anchored them to the floor. Clara burst into the room with bloodshot eyes. She had lost her elegant composure. Now she was a cornered beast. "Enough of this drama," she shouted, pointing at Alex. "Get out of my house, all of you out. This is a private family matter." Alex is having a psychotic break. Look at him. He's dirty, bleeding, delirious. Alex looked at her with exasperating calm. He wiped the blood from his hand onto his trousers and pulled his phone from his pocket. "Nobody is leaving," he said, his voice echoing with authority. "Not until you see why my son was locked in a basement while you all drank champagne." Alex walked towards the television. Clara instantly understood what was about to happen. Her eyes darted to the hidden camera in the painting frame above the fireplace, a detail she had overlooked 1,000 times. The color drained from her face. "Don't you dare!" Clara shrieked, launching herself at him to try and snatch the phone. "It's illegal! You can't record me in my own house!" But before she could reach Alex, Mei Ling stood up. It was a quick, fluid movement. The helper, the invisible woman, stepped in the way of the lady of the house. "Don't touch him," Mei Ling said. She didn't shout. She said it with a voice firm as steel. Clara stopped, incredulous. The audacity of the helper blinded her with rage. "Yuke," Clara hissed, saliva flying from her mouth. "You dare give me orders? You are a beggar I picked up from the street. Move, or I swear I'll kill you." Clara raised her hand again, this time with a closed fist, ready to strike Mei Ling in the face, ready to vent all her frustration on the weakest link. "Mummy, no." The scream didn't come from Mei Ling. It came from the sofa. It was Leo. The boy had stood up on the cushions. He hadn't screamed Mama calling for Clara. He had screamed to defend Mei Ling. Carla froze with her fist in the air, looking at the boy with hatred. "Your little monster," she muttered. "This is all your fault. If you were normal, none of this would happen. You should have died in that basement." The cruelty of the phrase elicited a choked gasp from the guests. "Shut up." Alex connected the cable to his phone with a sharp movement. The giant screen flickered to life, but Clara, in a final act of madness, lunged not at Alex, but at Leo. If she took the boy, she had the power. If she took him as an emotional shield, Alex couldn't do anything. "Come here," she screamed, grabbing Leo by the arm violently, trying to yank him off the sofa. Leo shrieked in pain. Mei Ling didn't think. She threw herself at Clara, shoving her with her shoulder. Clara, unbalanced by the heels and the surprise, stumbled and fell backward onto the glass coffee table, which shattered under her weight. The crash was monumental. Clara lay amidst the broken glass, stunned but furious, screaming curses. Mei Ling immediately positioned herself in front of Leo, shielding him with her own body, breathing raggedly with clenched fists. "No one touches the boy," Mei Ling screamed with a lioness's ferocity. "No one!" Alex looked at Mei Ling with deep, almost reverent respect. Then he looked at Clara's friends, who were watching the scene in horror. "Want to know who your friend really is?" Alex asked, pressing the play button on his phone. "Look at the screen and don't look away." The image on the television flickered and showed a clear 4K recording. It was from just a few hours ago. It showed Clara in the kitchen with a glass of wine, laughing alone while holding the sedative bottle. The audio filled the room with crystalline clarity. "Once we're married and Alex gives me full control, little Leo will need a more favorable climate in Switzerland. Very cheap, even if the bills say otherwise." Clara's friends covered their mouths. On the floor, amidst the broken glass, Clara stopped screaming. She stared at the screen, paralyzed, watching her own voice dictate her social death sentence. But Alex didn't stop there. "That was the fraud," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Now watch the torture." He slid his finger on the phone screen. The video changed. It now showed Leo's room the previous night, Clara entering, forcing the boy's mouth open, pouring the liquid by force, shoving him against the pillow as he tried to fight. The terror in the boy's eyes was visible. The "stay still" was audible. One of the guests started crying. Another turned away, unable to watch. "Turn it off," Clara wailed from the floor, trying to get up, cutting her hands on the glass. "It's a montage, it's AI. They want to ruin me." "No, Clara," Alex said, walking towards her and looking down at her like a disgusting insect. "You ruined yourself, and I have one last surprise for you." Alex signaled towards the main door. The blue and red lights of a police patrol began flashing through the broken living room windows. He hadn't called private security, he had called the authorities. "The game is over," Alex said. "Mei Ling, take Leo. Let's go to the garden. I don't want my son to watch how they take garbage away." The sound of the sirens abruptly ceased in front of the main entrance, replaced by the dull thud of car doors slamming shut and commanding voices echoing outside. Inside the living room, the giant screen continued to project the horror on a loop. The grainy image of Leo trembling in the darkness of the basement, silently hitting the floor. Clara's friends, women who minutes ago were holding crystal glasses and talking about trips to Paris, now backed against the walls, covering their mouths, looking at their hostess as if she were a cornered leper. Clara's social mask had completely disintegrated, thrown on the floor, surrounded by broken glass, her makeup smeared and her dress torn. She no longer looked like the queen of high society. She looked like what she really was, a cornered criminal. Two uniformed police officers entered the room with drawn weapons pointed at the floor but ready for action. Behind them entered a plainclothes officer with a badge on his belt and a seasoned face, Commander Rivas. Alex stepped forward, raising his open hands to show he was not a threat, even though his shirt was still stained with his own blood and the basement dirt. "I am Alex Montalvo, the owner of the house," he said in a firm voice, controlling the adrenaline that urged him to destroy everything. "I made the call." Commander Rivas scanned the room in a second. The broken glass, the woman on the floor, the terrified guests, and most importantly, the domestic helper protecting the child on the sofa. His gaze finally stopped at the television screen. "What is this?" Rivas asked, pointing at the video. "Evidence," Alex replied, pointing at Clara. "Unlawful detention of a minor, aggravated physical abuse, financial fraud, and administering controlled substances without a medical prescription." Clara tried to stand up, leaning on the broken table with hands bleeding from superficial cuts. Her narcissistic survival instinct activated with desperate force. "Officer! Thank God you arrived," she shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Alex. "This man is crazy. He attacked me. Look how he left me. It's a setup. That video is fake. It's a computer trick. He wants to take my money. I am Clara Velasco. My family owns the construction companies in the north. You don't know who you're messing with." The commander looked at Alex. Alex said nothing. He simply reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the lab report he had received on his phone, now printed on a sheet he'd picked up from his study before coming downstairs. "Toxicology report from this morning," Alex said coldly. "My 6-year-old son has enough sedatives in his blood to knock down a horse. Clinophenol and diazepam, traces of cumulative poison. If you check this woman's bag or her dress pocket, you will find the key to the basement where he was locked up 10 minutes ago. And if you search the guest bathroom, you will find the unlabeled bottles." Rivas read the paper. his eyebrows furrowed. He looked at Leo, who was still clinging to Mei Ling, pale and heavy-eyed. Then he looked at Clara. The doubt left her eyes. He made a sharp gesture to his men. Put her in cuffs. Clara let out a shriek when one of the officers grabbed her arm and lifted her off the floor without any delicacy. The metallic click of the handcuffs closing around her wrists resonated in the silent room like a hammer blow of justice. "Let go of me, brute!" Clara shrieked, kicking her legs. "I'll call my lawyer! I'll end all your careers!" "Alex, tell them to stop. I'm your son's mother." "You are no one's mother," Alex said, stepping closer to her until he was inches from her face. His voice was low, terrible. "You are a parasite, and I promise you, Clara, I will spend every last cent of my fortune to make sure you spend the rest of your youth in a 3x3 cell, without luxury, without friends, without escape." Clara looked around, seeking support from her guests, her soul sisters. "Help me," she begged them. "Say something. You all saw how he attacked me." The blonde woman with the jewels, the one who had laughed about the package earlier, averted her gaze and pulled out her phone not to call a lawyer, but to record the arrest. "Don't drag us into this, Clara," she said with disdain. "Drugs and child abuse. That's too low, even for you. You disgust us." The final betrayal broke Clara. She started screaming insults, cursing everyone, revealing her true poisonous nature. As the officers dragged her towards the door, she passed by the sofa where Leo was sitting. The boy, who had been hiding his face, turned to look at her. There was no fear in his eyes this time, only silent curiosity. He saw the chained witch. He saw she had no more power. "It's your fault, you cursed cripple." Clara spat towards the boy as they shoved her out. "I wish you had died in that basement." Commander Rivas shoved Clara hard towards the exit, cutting off her screams. "Get her out, and request a forensics unit to document the basement. I want photos of every corner." Alex watched the woman who had almost destroyed his life being taken away. He felt no pity, no love, only an immense emptiness, quickly filling with a painful relief. He turned to the guests, who were still standing there like salt statues. "Get out of my house," Alex ordered, pointing to the broken door. "And if I see any of those photos on social media, my lawyers will go after you for complicity. You knew what was happening and you laughed. Go away." The women fled in a stampede, tripping over their heels, running from the crime scene like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The living room was suddenly empty, save for the two officers guarding the entrance: Alex, Mei Ling, and Leo. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was the clean silence left after a violent storm. Alex stood in the middle of the shattered living room, breathing heavily, as if he had just run a marathon. His hands, which had been steady during the confrontation, began to tremble. The adrenaline was dissipating, giving way to the emotional reality of the moment. He looked at his bloody knuckles, then at the television screen, which was now black, and finally turned his head towards the sofa. Mei Ling was still kneeling on the Persian rug, littered with glass shards, her arms around Leo. The helper was trembling. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the shock was setting in. She, a humble woman who needed that job to survive, had just hit her boss's fiancé. She had disobeyed direct orders and had been part of a police scandal. In her mind, despite having done the right thing, the logic of fear told her that her life was ruined. "Sir," Mei Ling whispered, lowering her head, trying to gently release Leo. "I'm going to go pack my things. I'm so sorry for the mess, the table, the shouting. I didn't want to cause trouble. I'll leave through the service door so the police don't." Alex stared at her, stunned by what he was hearing. Leaving. That woman had just saved his son's life. She had stood between a monster and a helpless child. She had endured insults, threats, and almost blows. And her first concern was to apologize for a broken table. "What?" Alex walked towards her, his steps crunching on the fragments of glass. Mei Ling flinched, interpreting his approach as the prelude to being fired. "You don't need to pay me for the week, sir. I understand this is too much trouble. Just let me go." Alex fell to his knees in front of her. He didn't squat. He collapsed. His knees hit the hard floor, ignoring the glass shards digging into the fabric of his trousers. He came to Mei Ling's eye level, and for the first time, the great entrepreneur, the untouchable millionaire, was at the same level as his domestic helper. "Mei Ling, look at me," he said, his voice broken by tears he could no longer hold back. She looked up, frightened, and met Alex's eyes, filled with a gratitude so profound it hurt to see. "You are not going anywhere," Alex said, taking her hands, those rough working hands, still wearing the ridiculous and heroic yellow rubber gloves. You saved my son. You saw what I refused to see. You defended him when I was blind. If anyone has to apologize here, it's me." Alex released her hands and looked at Leo. His son was watching him with a new intensity. There was no longer that haze of drugs in his eyes. There was recognition. There was a silent judgment. "Leo." Alex stretched out his hand, afraid of rejection. He had every right to be rejected. He had let that woman into their lives. "Forgive me, champ. Papa was a fool. Papa didn't protect you. But I swear to you, by your mother's memory, no one will ever hurt you again. You will never be afraid in your own house again." Leo looked at his father's hand, then at Mei Ling. She smiled through her tears and nodded slightly, giving him permission, giving him security. And then it happened. Leo let go of Mei Ling's embrace. He didn't crawl. He stood up on the rug, wobbling a bit from the weakness in his numb legs, but standing straight. He took a step towards Alex, then another. "Papa," Leo said in a clear voice. The boy threw himself forward, and Alex caught him in the air, hugging him with desperate force, burying his face in his son's small neck, weeping like a child. He felt Leo's little arms wrap around his neck, squeezing, comforting. It wasn't the hug of a sick child, it was the hug of a survivor. "Are you here? Are you here?" Alex repeated, rocking him. Mei Ling watched the scene, feeling like an intruder in that intimate moment, but unable to move. She felt exhausted, empty, but at the same time filled with a strange warmth. She slowly took off her yellow gloves, leaving them on the broken table. They were the symbol of her old life, of her submission. Alex looked up with Leo still in his arms and looked at Mei Ling. "Mei Ling," she said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Tomorrow morning, I'll have my lawyers draft a new contract. You will never clean floors again. You will not wear a uniform. I want you to be Leo's legal guardian. I want you to live here with us, as part of the family. I want him to grow up with the only person who had the courage to love him when no one else did. Sir, I don't have studies. I don't know how to be a guardian," she stammered, overwhelmed. "You taught him how to laugh," Alex said, standing up with Leo in his arms. "That is more than any university can teach. Please, don't leave us. We need you." Leo, from his father's arms, stretched a hand towards Mei Ling, with open fingers, inviting her. "El Leo," the child said. Mei Ling burst into tears again, but this time, they were not tears of fear. She nodded, unable to speak, and took Leo's small hand. The three of them formed a circle in the middle of the destroyed living room, a core of humanity surrounded by ruins. Outside, the night was dark, but inside, for the first time in years, it felt like dawn was breaking. Clara's nightmare was over, but the real healing was just beginning. Alex looked at his son, and the woman who had saved him. He knew that although he had lost his fiancée and his social standing with those fake friends, he had gained something infinitely more valuable. A second chance to be a father. "Let's go to sleep," Alex said softly. "But not here. Let's go to a hotel. This house needs to be cleaned of bad memories." The three of them walked out the front door, leaving behind the broken glass, the yellow gloves on the table, and the echo of the sirens, walking towards an uncertain future, but a free one. 6 months can seem like a blink in the span of time, but for the Montalvo family, the last 180 days had been a lifetime, compressed into a painful and beautiful reconstruction. The mansion, which once stood as a cold monument to loneliness and neglect, had changed. It wasn't just about the decor, although the hostile designer furniture and sharp glass surfaces had disappeared, replaced by large sofas of soft fabric, thick rugs where one could throw themselves on the floor without fear, and walls full of warm colors. The real change was in the air. The house no longer smelled of industrial cleaning chemicals and the expensive perfumes of a cruel woman. Now it smelled of baked bread, old wood, open books, and life. Alex stood on the terrace, leaning on the wooden railing, watching the horizon where the afternoon sun was beginning to tint the sky in oranges and violets. He no longer wore the three-piece suit he used as armor against the world. He wore comfortable linen trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked younger, not because he had fewer wrinkles. In fact, the last few months of trials and therapy had added a few more specks of gray to his beard, but because the perpetual tension that furrowed his brow was gone. His thoughts briefly drifted to the end of the legal process, a memory that still held a bittersweet taste. He recalled the image of Clara in court just 2 weeks ago. She no longer looked like the imposing, arrogant woman who dominated charity galas. Dressed in the defendant's gray uniform, without makeup, with dull hair and an empty gaze, she looked like a shadow of her former self. The sentence had been relentless. 15 years in prison, without the possibility of parole for aggravated child abuse, administering illicit substances to a minor, and massive fraud. The judge had shown no mercy, especially after seeing the videos. Clara's friends had testified against her to save their own reputations, and the society she so revered had spat her out and forgotten her in record time. Justice had been served, yes, but the real victory hadn't happened in a courtroom. The real victory was happening right now, a few meters from where Alex stood. "Papa, look at this!" Leo's voice broke his thoughts, clear and vibrant like a bell. Alex turned and felt that pang of incredulous happiness that still hit him every time he heard his son speak fluently. In the center of the garden, the very garden where it all began, Leo was running after a football. There was no red wheelchair gathering dust in a corner anymore. That chair had been donated to a hospital the same day doctors confirmed that the muscle atrophy was completely reversible. Leo had gained weight. His cheeks had the pink color of health, and his eyes shone with a voracious intelligence. The detoxification process had been hell nights of fever, tremors, nightmares, where the boy screamed, begging them not to give him the drops, but they hadn't faced it alone. Alex looked towards the figure running alongside Leo, Mei Ling. She too was different. The synthetic blue uniform and the yellow rubber gloves were a thing of the past, metaphorically burned on the bonfire of her old life. Mei Ling wore a simple floral dress with her hair down in natural waves. She looked radiant. In the last 6 months, Alex had kept his word, and more. Mei Ling had not only become Leo's legal guardian, she had started studying child psychology at the university in the mornings, showing a brilliant and empathetic mind that had been wasted scrubbing floors. But beyond her studies, she had become the emotional pillar of the house. Mei Ling intercepted the ball with a laugh, passing it to Leo with skill. "Very good, Leo," she exclaimed. "Now kick hard towards the goal." Leo prepared, concentrating, sticking his tongue out slightly in an adorable effort, and kicked the ball with all his might towards the makeshift goal between 2 trees. "Goal!" the boy shouted, raising his arms to the sky, imitating the celebrations he saw on TV with his father on Sundays. Alex walked down the terrace steps and towards them, feeling the cool grass under his bare feet. Seeing him approach, Leo ran to him and threw himself against his legs. Alex lifted him effortlessly into the air, spinning him around as the boy roared with laughter. That laughter, the same laughter that had saved both their lives 6 months ago. "You are a champion, Leo," Alex said, kissing his son's sweaty forehead. "The coach says you are the fastest on the team." "It's because Mei Ling trains me," Leo said with complete seriousness, pointing at her. "She runs very fast." Alex looked at Mei Ling, and they shared a knowing smile, a look loaded with an intimacy that had grown slowly day by day, between morning coffees, homework, and long evening conversations after Leo fell asleep. It hadn't been an instant movie romance. It had been something deeper, a construction based on mutual respect and shared gratitude. Alex had had to learn to forgive himself for his previous blindness, and Mei Ling had had to learn to trust that not all powerful men were like the ones who had humiliated her in the past. "I think Mei Ling has many hidden talents," Alex said, lowering Leo to the ground. "Why don't you go get some water from the kitchen, champ? Mei Ling and I need to talk for a minute." Leo looked at both of them with that sharp intuition that children who have suffered possess. He smiled mischievously, as if he knew exactly what was going on, and ran towards the house shouting, "I'm bringing lemonade for everyone!" The silence left in the garden was not awkward, but electric. The sun was setting, bathing Mei Ling in a golden light that made her look like an earthly angel. She crossed her arms, a little nervous, diverting her gaze towards the flowers she had replanted herself. "The lawyer called today," Alex said, taking another step closer to her, breaking the silence. "Ah, really?" Mei Ling looked up, worried. "Did something bad happen with the custody? Did Clara appeal?" "No," Alex shook his head gently. "Quite the opposite. Full custody is mine, irrevocable, and the restraining order is permanent. But he called about another matter, your employment papers." Mei Ling's expression darkened slightly. The subject of her employment had always been a gray area. Alex paid her a generous salary as a guardian, but she felt strange accepting money for loving Leo. "Oh, I see. If you need to adjust anything, sir, Alex." "I need to adjust everything, Mei Ling," he said, taking another step. He was now close enough to smell her perfume, a mix of vanilla and freshness that had become his favorite scent. "I want to terminate the contract." Mei Ling pallid. The old fear, the fear of instability, flashed in her eyes for a second. "Terminate it? But have I done something wrong? I thought Leo was progressing well. His grades are excellent, and the therapist says that." "Mei Ling, stop." Alex extended his hands and took hers. They were warm and soft. There was no trace of the harshness of detergents left. "I'm not firing you. I'm setting you free. I don't want you to be my employee. I don't want you to receive a salary for being here. That creates a barrier, a hierarchy that no longer exists and that I don't want to exist." "I don't understand," she whispered, her heart hammering wildly in her chest. Alex sighed, searching for the right words. He had closed million-dollar deals without batting an eye, but this was the most important negotiation of his life. "When I arrived that day and saw you on the lawn with Leo, I didn't just see a woman caring for a child. I saw what was missing in this house. I saw what was missing in my soul. For these past 6 months, you have taught me how to be a father. You taught me that money is useless if you have no one to share laughter with. You saved me, Mei Ling. Both of us. You saved me too, Alex." Mei Ling felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I had nothing. I was alone in the world. Leo gave me a purpose." "Then stay," Alex said, his voice dropping to a hoarse, vulnerable tone. "But not as a guardian, not as a nanny. Stay as the owner of this house. Stay as my partner." Alex let go of one of her hands and reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a massive diamond ring. He knew Mei Ling didn't like those things. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a simple white gold pendant with a small figure, a paper aeroplane. The symbol of that first day. The symbol of aeroplane. Leo's first word. The beginning of their freedom. "I'm not proposing marriage yet because I know you need to finish your studies and have your own path," Alex said, placing the pendant in her hand. "But I am asking you to try to be a family, a real one, with no contracts in between, just the three of us." Mei Ling looked at the small gold aeroplane and then looked at Alex. All the doubts, all the fears about her humble origins and the class difference dissolved before the brutal honesty of this man who had learned to love again. "An aeroplane," she smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks. "So we can fly together," he replied. Mei Ling closed her fist around the pendant and nodded, unable to speak, and threw herself into his arms. Alex received her with the force of someone who finds water in the desert. The kiss was slow, sweet, loaded with promises and a bright future. It wasn't a Hollywood movie kiss. It was a real kiss from two adults who had survived their own shipwrecks and found each other on the shore. "Hey, you two are kissing! So gross!" Leo's voice interrupted them, and both separated, laughing. The boy was at the terrace door, holding a tray with 3 glasses of lemonade that were wobbling dangerously. There was no trauma in his voice, only the healthy teasing of a 6-year-old seeing his father acting like a lovesick teenager. "Come here, little critic," Alex said, waving him over. Leo ran towards them, leaving the tray on a garden table, a miracle that nothing fell and squeezed into the hug. The 3 of them stood there, in the center of the garden as the sun finished setting. Alex looked at his healthy, happy son. He looked at Mei Ling, the woman who had brought the light, and thought about how ironic fate was. He had spent his life seeking financial success, building empires, believing that happiness could be bought or built with expensive bricks. And in the end, happiness had entered his life through the service door, wearing a cheap uniform and yellow gloves to teach him that true wealth is not kept in the bank, but found in simple moments. An afternoon of sun, a child's laughter, and the absolute certainty that no matter what happened, they would never be alone again. "You know what?" Leo said, looking at the sky that was beginning to show the first stars. "I think tomorrow we should go to the beach. Mei Ling has never seen the sea." Alex looked at Mei Ling with surprise. "It's true." She shrugged, blushing. "I never went out much from the city. The sea was always a distant dream." Alex smiled, a wide, genuine smile. "Then pack your bags, future psychologist. Tomorrow we go to the beach, and the day after, to the mountains. We have a whole life to make up for lost time." And as they walked back into the house, with the warm lights turning on inside, inviting them into a home that was finally a home, Alex knew that this time the story's ending wasn't happily ever after. It was something better. It was, they were brave, and they truly lived. The door closed behind them, leaving the darkness outside, and the garden fell silent, keeping the secret of how a pair of yellow gloves changed the destiny of 3 souls forever. The end.